This is my first book written, more precisely like an essay without an outline. I write whatever comes to mind, but who knows if it's an autobiography. It's both true and false. I would like to present this book as a gift to my only reader. Chapter 1. Initial. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Do you say, no clothes? I am in the same robe as my son. Wang Yu is in charge of training my spear and spear. Shang Xiaoran looked at the scenery outside the window, as if the teacher's incessant voice on the podium had not even reached his ears. Unlike others, he only felt the noise. Compared to so-called knowledge, he prefers to observe other things, such as autumn leaves everywhere, clouds in the sky, children chasing and playing, or waves of cicadas chirping. However, under a roar, he is clearly forced back to reality. Shang Xiaoran. What are you thinking if you don't listen in class? The person who scolded him was Shang Xiaoran's Chinese teacher, also his homeroom teacher, surnamed Yang. He was a relatively gentle teacher. I don't know when he started, but this good student suddenly became absent-minded about everything, sometimes staring out the window for a long time. I don't know, he didn't lie either. He didn't know what he was thinking, but he enjoyed the feeling of his brain being empty. It was also at this time that he clearly felt that he might not be suitable for the current environment. Come to my office after class, the teacher said, and asked him to sit down. With two knocking sounds on the door, Shang Xiaoran pushed open the door and walked in without waiting for an answer. The Chinese department is a large office, and the entire high school Chinese teacher is here. Shang Xiaoran walked back and found his homeroom teacher. Let's talk about it. Why has my recent state been so bad and my grades have been declining so severely? This is true. 6 months ago, Shang Xiaoran's grades were still stable in the top 5 of his grade. Since that winter vacation, his grades have slipped from the top 5 to the top 50, which is not a good phenomenon. Sorry teacher, I've been thinking for a long time, I'm going to take a leave of absence. Shang Xiaoran didn't answer the teacher's question directly, but instead said a sentence that shocked all the teachers present, taking a break from high school in the 3rd year. Have you made up your mind? The college entrance examination is about to take place, and I don't care if you're being naughty or not, but I hope you can adjust your state of mind as soon as possible and not live such a decadent life all day long. Well, I've figured it out, teacher. Tomorrow, I'll have my head come to handle the procedures, and here's the proof. Shang Xiaoran took out a stack of A4 papers in his hand, with a diagnostic report at the top. Name: Shang Xiaoran. Age: 18 years old. Bipolar depression. Teacher Yang couldn't come to her senses after seeing the diagnostic report for a long time, and she couldn't believe that it was written by this student. She looked at Shang Xiaoran with a sense of shock and pity in her eyes. Teacher Yang, could you please borrow your phone? I would like to call my father and ask him to come and handle the procedures. Shang Xiaoran's high school does not allow students to use their phones at any time. If they bring their phones to school, they need to be placed in a special box, which Shang Xiaoran finds difficult, so he decided not to bring them. Okay, let's go. Teacher Yang handed out his phone by chance before he could fully recover. Shang Xiaoran nodded and thanked him before going out to make a phone call. The process of handling the procedures was also relatively smooth. Apart from the symbolic appeal made by Teacher Yang and the grade director, there was nothing else to do. After completing the procedures, Shang Xiaoran and his father left the school together. When they arrived at the school gate, Shang Xiaoran looked back at the school again, with more helplessness and reluctance in his eyes. After all, if his own condition allowed, he would not choose this outcome. Chapter 2. Endless Confusion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It's done. Have you figured out what to do next? Shang Xiaoran's father said to him. Not yet, let's go home first. I'm tired and want to sleep. Shang Xiaoran didn't think much. After all, he didn't dare to say anything more now. He always felt guilty to his parents and didn't give them a satisfactory answer. This year silent all the way, the two of them returned home. As soon as they entered the room, Shang Xiaoran went straight back to his room. After unlocking their phones, they slid left and right on the desktop, not knowing what they wanted to see. So they closed it, lay down, covered their heads with a blanket, and began to sleep. It was already 5:30 p.m. when I woke up. If it weren't for Shang's father calling him, Shang Xiaoran might have slept until the next morning. Get up for dinner, take you out for a walk after dinner, said Shang Fu. He turned around and went out. Shang Xiaoran searched his temples, and after sleeping too much in the afternoon, his entire body clock was disrupted. Now he felt dizzy. He put on his slippers and went to the restaurant to eat. Where are we going? Shang Xiaoran asked as soon as he got on the car and fastened his seatbelt. The season is about to change, and there's nothing to do today. I'll take you to the mall to buy 2 clothes. Can we not go? Shang Xiaoran personally doesn't really like buying clothes. He only wears 2 sets of clothes back and forth a year, and thinks buying clothes is a very difficult task. Choosing the most suitable one among a bunch of clothes is simply more difficult than buying lottery tickets and selecting the correct number. Shang's father didn't speak, just gave him a blank glance, and Shang Xiaoran knew he needed to shut up. He sighed helplessly, put on his headphones, and headed towards his destination. After arriving at the mall, he just strolled around a few shops and picked a few to check out. After all, Shang Xiaoran felt that he still had some beauty, was tall, and looked good in everything he wore. After returning home, Shang Xiaoran lay back in bed and began to think about what he needed to do next. He couldn't stay at home anymore. He didn't want to waste his time anymore, so he clicked on a short video app to see if there were any profitable jobs or part-time jobs. After watching it for a while, there were not many who were serious about it. There were 10 videos, 7 or 8 advertisements, all selling courses. Shang Xiaoran put down his phone and sighed. It was obvious that he didn't expect any valuable feedback from the internet. Bored, Shang Xiaoran sat in bed and looked out the window. The moonlight was bright, and the flowers in the flower bed downstairs bloomed as the temperature gradually warmed, appearing particularly beautiful under the moonlight. If only I were a flower, a tree, or even a blade of grass, Shang Xiaoran thought to himself, then there wouldn't be so much trouble or illness. He would live freely and carefree every day, and if he didn't want to live, he would die. Anyway, he would still bloom the next year. P.S. Hua. Okay, you're aloof. If you don't want to live, you'll die. Shang Xiaoran's thoughts flowed with the moonlight until a year ago. That was a cold winter, and the winter in the north came relatively early. At that time, it was already very cold. At that time, Shang Xiaoran's daily life could only be described as dull and uninteresting. The academic pressure was very high, and coupled with the high expectations of teachers and parents, it may also be the factor that led to today's result. However, it was ultimately due to his own poor ability to withstand this pressure. At that time, Shang Xiaoran was just like now, lost and helpless, as if in an environment without any light, unable to see the way forward or the future. Chapter 3. Find some work to do. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After regaining his senses, Shang Xiaoran opened the job application on his phone to see if he could find a relatively good job. Sales, telemarketing, and insurance. Shang Xiaoran struggled. Why are all these things? Is it true that without education, one can only sell things? But it is obvious that he is not motivated by this. I have hands and feet, and if I don't do sales, I can starve myself to death. P.S. Later on, I found out that I would really starve to death. Why not? The next day, Shang Xiaoran boarded the nearest train and headed to a new city, Xingqing. As soon as I left the train station, the first thing I did was to find a place to live. I opened my phone and searched aimlessly. After all, my workplace had not yet been chosen, and it was also my first time coming to this city. I am not familiar with the place, so finding a suitable place is still quite difficult. Shang Xiaoran kept walking with his head down, not even noticing a person walking towards him in front of him. So neither of them noticed and collided, causing the other person's phone to fall to the ground along with the collision. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, I didn't notice. Shang Xiaoran immediately helped the girl across from him, picked up her phone, and returned it to her. It was then that he noticed the girl in front of him. She was about 20 years old in college, wearing a white dress with long hair naturally draped over her shoulders. Her fair and tender face had a touch of delicate charm, like a fairy descending from the sky. In human terms, she was beautiful and beautiful. It's okay, the girl quickly waved her hand, only to realize that the boy in front of her seemed a bit dazed in his eyes, which was not surprising to Shang Xiaoran. This girl was really beautiful, and the impact on a single boy who had been single for 18 years was a bit strong. The girl waved her hand in front of Shang Xiaoran's eyes, and he finally regained his senses. I'm sorry, I'm just, Shang Xiaoran nervously said, unable to speak. At this moment, he felt particularly ashamed and just stared at others like this. It's okay, hello, my name is Hu Xinyu. The girl in front of me reached out her hand. Hello, Shang Xiaoran. Shang Xiaoran also extended his hand and the two shook hands to meet. Where are you going now? Maybe we're still on our way, Shang Xiaoran asked. After all, he's not familiar with his place. The little girl in front of him seems to be from this local area. Perhaps he can help introduce himself to this city. I'm ready to go home now. I'm working here and I just came back from a break a while ago, Hu Xinyu said. And where are you going? I just came here, I don't know where to go yet, Shang Xiaoran said awkwardly, touching his head. Where are the cheaper houses here? After all, I just came here and don't have much money in my hands. That's it, Hu Xinyu thought for a moment as he finished speaking. A bold idea grew in his heart. He looked at the boy in front of him, who was quite tall and good-looking, but a bit stunned. How about you share the apartment with me? My roommate has gone home, and the house I rented is a 2-bedroom apartment. It's a bit difficult for me to pay 2 rents alone. If you don't mind, you can do it too. Really? Shang Xiaoran was pleasantly surprised. After all, who wouldn't want to share a house with a beautiful sister? So he happily agreed and then followed Hu Xinyu home. Upon arriving at the residential area where Hu Xinyu was located, the surrounding environment and facilities were all well equipped. Surprisingly, there was also some seclusion in this mocking city. The residential area looked high-end, and Shang Xiaoran looked up at these buildings, feeling as if he had just entered the city. He was curious about everything, and Hu Xinyu noticed his behavior. A feeling of cuteness flashed through his heart, so he smiled knowingly. I don't know how long I've been turning left and right, finally reaching the downstairs of Hu Xinyu's house. The road inside here is a bit complicated. Did you remember the trip you just made? Hu Xinyu was afraid he might not remember, so he asked. There's not a big difference, it's almost enough to walk 2 more times, Shang Xiaoran said with a hint of comfort. After all, he's a road enthusiast. He can't even remember this kind of road condition if he doesn't walk 10 or 8 times. After entering the room, Shang Xiaoran looked around and found that it was not very large. The standard 2-bedroom, 1 living room layout gave off a warm feeling. Hu Xinyu cleaned the room spotlessly, and even after not coming back for a while, there was not much dust inside the house. This is my 2nd bedroom, so why don't you stay here? The rent is 2,200 yuan per month, so just give me 1,000 yuan per month. It's not a big burden for you, is it? Hu Xinyu asked. After all, she also came from the stage of Shang Xiaoran and was afraid that this rent would put pressure on him. It's okay, it's acceptable, Shang Xiaoran said and put his luggage into the 2nd bedroom. After putting everything inside the suitcase, he lay down on the bed. That's good, just call me if you have anything to do. Then Hu Xinyu took out her phone and added Shang Xiaoran's prestige. Seeing Shang Xiaoran's prestige avatar as a small dog, she thought to herself, he was really a cute boy. Shang Xiaoran lay in bed, looking at the balance on his phone and sighing at the ceiling. It was time to find some work to earn some pocket money, otherwise the monthly rent of 1,000 would still be a bit difficult for him. After all, He didn't want to ask for money from his family anymore. Chapter 4. With you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next morning, the gentle breeze outside the window accompanied by cicadas chirping. As Shang Xiaoran did not have the habit of pulling curtains while sleeping, the warm sun shone on his face. Shang Xiaoran slowly opened his eyes and picked up his phone in a daze, wanting to see the current time, 7:40. Shang Xiaoran suddenly became mentally alert. After all, he should have been sitting in the classroom to start morning reading at this time when he was in school. He quickly tried to find the homeroom teacher in his address book and came up with a reasonable reason to explain why he didn't arrive at school on time today. Have diarrhea? No, I can't. I've used it many times. Have I had a fever? I can't have a fever for no reason, can I? Shang Xiaoran thought to himself, but suddenly his fingers snapped, and he realized that he had taken a leave of school and didn't need to go to school for the time being. It also explained why the alarm clock didn't ring. Shang Xiaoran sighed and lay back, finally resting. Whatever it was, let's get a good night's sleep before we talk about anything else. When she woke up again, it was already 9:30. Shang Xiaoran rubbed her eyes and pushed open the bedroom door, only to find that Hu Xinyu was already watching TV in the living room. However, Shang Xiaoran found it quite novel, as there are not many young people nowadays who wake up in the morning to watch morning news. Good morning, how did you sleep? Hu Xinyu spoke first. It's okay, it's very comfortable. Shang Xiaoran scratched his head awkwardly. After all, living under the same roof as a girl for the first time at such a young age, it's still a bit shy. That's good. The breakfast is on the table. Go to wash first and then eat. Shang Xiaoran looked back. There was a steamed bun and soybean milk on the table. I wonder if Hu Xinyu had just finished eating. At this time, the steamed bun in the plastic bag was still steaming. Okay, thank you. How much is it? I'll give it to you later. No, I made it myself, not bought it outside. Can you still cook? Can't you? Shang Xiaoran didn't continue this awkward topic anymore. He turned around and ran back to his room, taking out his towel and washing up in the bathroom. Hu Xinyu, who was sitting on the sofa, couldn't help but smile when he saw this scene. It's quite cute, just like when I was a child. After washing up, Shang Xiaoran walked to the dining table in a disheveled manner and started eating. Although it was made by Hu Xinyu himself, the taste was no less than that of the steamed buns sold outside, with a perfect combination of color, aroma, and taste. Really eat well. Is this soybean milk made by himself? Shang Xiaoran raised soybean milk in his hand and shook it to Hu Xinyu. That's not true. I didn't buy a soybean milk machine. I bought soybean milk. Oh, okay, Shang Xiaoran continued to eat. He didn't have the habit of eating breakfast originally because his stomach and intestines were not very good, and everything he ate in the morning felt a bit disgusting. However, he unexpectedly ate a lot today. I don't know if it's because this steamed bun was made by pretty sister herself. P.S. Shang Xiaoran. I didn't think so. You author is pure pervert. Quickly, Shang Xiaoran finished breakfast and, out of courtesy, tidied up the table before returning to the bedroom to consider what to do next. As soon as he came out of the kitchen, Hu Xinyu stopped him. Come here for a moment, I have something to tell you. Shang Xiaoran was surprised in his heart. Perhaps this person had turned back and wanted to drive him out. A lonely and homeless image has automatically emerged in my mind. Hey. What's on your mind? It's coming back to you, Hu Xinyu said as he took a step and froze in place. He didn't know what he was thinking, but his silly expression was a bit cute. It's okay. Suddenly, I thought of something. What's up? Shang Xiaoran regained consciousness and stood across from the sofa. Come sit here, I won't eat you. Hu Xinyu patted the area next to him, gesturing for him to sit next to him. Is this okay? Is it really okay to be so close? Shang Xiaoran thought to himself. Although he was very resistant in his heart, his body was honest. He still sat next to Hu Xinyu, and as soon as he sat down, he smelled a refreshing fragrance, which belonged to the kind of smell on Hu Xinyu's hair and body. It was very fascinating. Excuse me, have you found a suitable job yet? Hu Xinyu asked as he looked at the stunned boy in front of him. Not yet. Not yet. Although I'm an adult now, I don't have a degree, and many jobs don't want me. For some reason, sitting next to Hu Xinyu, my speech became less fluent, and as Hu Xinyu waved his head to look at him, the fragrant breeze directly rushed towards Shang Xiaoran. If my heart was in turmoil, Shang Xiaoran's heart should be filled with 10,000 bison charging forward. It's a problem. How about this? I have my own small company now, mainly helping others with bookkeeping. You can work with me and I'll teach you accounting. Hu Xinyu pretended to bow her head and ponder, but in fact, she had already thought about it before going to bed last night and was planning to trick this little boy over today. Working with you. Shang Xiaoran was very surprised. Firstly, she could work with her, and secondly, she had her own company. Is the scene in the novel of being young and approaching a wealthy woman to be realized on oneself? Tsk, why, don't you want to? Hu Xinyu frowned slightly and stared at Shang Xiaoran. No, I would love to, but I don't know anything. I'm afraid I'll hold you back. Since knowing that Hu Xinyu is so powerful, Shang Xiaoran changed his title from you to you. It's okay, everyone said I taught you. Let's go with me in a few days. As for salary, I'll give you 4,000 yuan per month, and after deducting 1,000 yuan, I'll give you 3,000 yuan in rent. Hu Xinyu breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. He thought he wouldn't agree, but he didn't want to do that much anymore. Just cheat him over. It's not that he likes him, it's because he's afraid of being deceived. Yes, he's afraid of being deceived. Hu Xinyu thought to himself, and a gentle smile couldn't help but appear on his face. Okay. Thank you so much. You are really my benefactor, and there is no way to repay your kindness. I promise you with my own life. What do you think? Shang Xiaoran smiled and looked at Hu Xinyu, feeling extremely excited. He had just come here and met a benefactor. She was such a beautiful little sister, not to mention how happy she was. No need. Hu Xinyu looked at him with a disdainful expression, thinking to himself, do I have to take back what I just said and still make it? Why did this person suddenly become strange? Thank you. I want to tell my dad the good news first, Shang Xiaoran said before bouncing back to the bedroom, wanting to tell everyone the good news as soon as possible. Hu Xinyu couldn't help but smile as he looked at his back. He was still the child who hadn't grown up. He shook his head and sighed before returning to his bedroom. He opened the bottom drawer of his desk, which didn't hold many things like the others. There was only one photo inside, covered with a clean and tidy cloth. Hu Xinyu reached out to take away this layer of cloth, and an old photo with traces of time appeared in front of her. The angle of the photo was a bit like a sneak shot, but it could vaguely distinguish which person, and there was also some resemblance. Shang Xiaoran. Is it really you? You probably can't recognize me anymore. It's been so many years. Have you really happened to meet you here? Hu Xinyu said softly, her voice very light, as if the chirping of birds outside the window could cover her voice. She reached out to wipe the photo and put it back. Looking at the photo, her eyes couldn't help but judge a bit more. This time, let me save you instead. Chapter 5. Old Stories in the South of the City. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Shang Xiaoran and Hu Xinyu were very young, they lived in Xuanfu City. Although it was called a city, most people in this city thought it was just a small county town. The city was not very large and not very developed, but people's happiness was still high. After all, small cities do not have so much life pressure, and they coincidentally live in the south of Xuanfu City. There is a small park there, which is also the place where they first met. Hu Xinyu showed off her exceptional talent and appearance at a very young age. The elders from all over the country couldn't help but feel an indescribable love for this lovely girl. Even when Hu Xinyu was 3 years old, many families broke through the threshold to marry her. Of course, most of them were adults' jokes. When Hu Xinyu was in primary school, her grades remained in first place, but this also led to a problem. Such a perfect child seemed to be naturally not fond of joking. No matter what others said to her, she always had a stern face and didn't want to say another word, which also caused her to have nothing to say. My friend, the children don't want to play with her. One day, the weather was nice, and Hu Xinyu felt bored staying at home. She wanted to go out and let out some fresh air. She walked aimlessly on the street and came to this small park by some strange coincidence. Watching the children chasing and playing inside, her face was filled with the innocence and liveliness that this age should have. Hu Xinyu stood across from them, forming a strong contrast. Suddenly, a sandbag flew over and hit her head. She bent down and picked up the culprit that hurt her. She looked around and saw 5 or 6 little boys running over because they were all near her home. They were all from the same school, so there were some who recognized Hu Xinyu. Seeing a group of people walking over in a fierce manner, Hu Xinyu also felt uneasy at this moment. "Hey, that mute, give us the sandbag back," shouted a larger boy at the leader. "Mute. Are you talking about me?" Hu Xinyu thought to himself, "I'm not mute. You're the mute." Hu Xinyu exclaimed angrily, "Aren't you? Why didn't you say a word during school? It's easy to pretend." The leading child didn't listen to her defense and went up to snatch the sandbag from her hand, leaving Hu Xinyu in a daze. It wasn't until 13 seconds later that she realized how aggrieved she was. She felt that not being able to speak was also a point that needed to be despised. She couldn't help but burst into tears. "Why are you crying? If you keep acting like this and don't dare to resist, they will continue to bully you." At this moment, someone spoke under a nearby tree. Hu Xinyu followed the sound and saw a boy sitting under the tree, with a dog-tail grass in his mouth and something in his hand. In this hot summer, his words blew into Hu Xinyu's heart like a cool breeze. The little boy looked up and dropped the stones he was playing with in his hand. He walked straight towards Hu Xinyu and patted her back. After all, if he cried, his mother would comfort him like this. Hu Xinyu felt his clumsy patting of himself and suddenly jumped away. After all, his father had told him not to let boys get too close to him. "Tell me, what's wrong?" Hu Xinyu's sudden movement also startled him. At this moment, Hu Xinyu had the opportunity to observe this boy. Although he was not particularly handsome, he was very pleasing to the eye. His facial features were very straight, and he was still wearing long clothes and pants in the midsummer season, giving people a very out-of-place feeling. "It's okay," Hu Xinyu said. "Her personality is like this. She never tells anyone if she has any discomfort or grievances, only slowly holds them back with herself." "Oh, it doesn't matter, I know it even if you don't say it." The little boy spread out his hand, his eyes filled with pity. "If you dare not go, then I will reluctantly help you." After speaking, the boy rolled up his sleeves and walked towards the group of people, leaving Hu Xinyu in a daze. She didn't know who this boy was, she had never seen him before, and didn't know why he wanted to help her. At this age, she didn't understand what love was. Hu Xinyu felt that a layer of waves suddenly appeared in her calm heart, constantly washing away her soul. "Hey, stop playing, let me say a few words." The boy stopped them and grabbed the sandbags they threw at each other. "Who are you? Disturb us playing. Do you believe me or not? I'll hit you." The leading boy watched as he walked over with a fierce aura. "You don't need to know who I am. Anyway, I know you made her cry just now. Now you should apologize and apologize. Did your teacher not teach you to admit your mistake?" The boy pointed to Hu Xinyu and said to him. Hu Xinyu, who was far away, looked at the boy pointing to him and suddenly felt nervous. She began to worry a bit about whether the boy would be bullied because of this. Should she run quickly to find her parents? "What are you, asking me to apologize? She's just a mute." The leading boy laughed heartily, and the group of little brothers following him also laughed along. if there's no need to talk, then stop talking. The boy's gaze suddenly became fierce. However, the child was still a child, and the adults walking around saw that the situation was not right. They quickly ran over and pulled their own child home, and before leaving, they didn't forget to count their own child. It's boring. They all ran away. The boy watched as everyone left, feeling bored and walking back to Husinyu's side. Did you see that in the future, if someone bullies you, you have to resist, otherwise they will only bully you even more. Got it. The boy looked up at Husinyu, as if waiting for her praise. At this moment, Husinyu also felt that the boy in front of him was particularly cute. Got it. Hey, how old and where are you from? What's your name? Husinyu asked in confusion. After all, she had never seen him here before. San Xiao, 10 years old this year. Shang Zhaoran. Although the boy didn't understand why he had to ask so many questions at once, he still answered them one by one. I'm also a junior high school student. I'm 12 years older than you, so if you want to call me sister. Husinyu pouted and raised her head with a condescending demeanor, but in fact, she's a little shorter than this 2-year younger brother. He, just call me if you want. I don't have a timid sister like you. Shang Zhaoran glanced at her and didn't understand why she wanted to call her sister when she came up. Just now, she was clearly protecting her, so she called me brother, which was quite similar. Hey, then don't worry, I'm your sister. Why are you here by yourself? No one's playing with you. Husinyu stomped her feet angrily, as if the rebellious younger brother in front of her was not as cute as before. Aren't you too? You don't have anyone to play with, Shang Zhaoran said as she looked around her. Forget it, you seem quite bored. If you're willing in the future, come to this position to find me. I'm usually here. Shang Zhaoran finally broke the silence and thought to himself, since I don't have any friends, I should make an extra friend. Is it okay? Alright. Husinyu's dimly lit eyes lit up again, his big eyes blinking at him, feeling indescribably happy in his heart. Just now, everyone was paying attention. She looks good, Shang Zhaoran thought to himself as he looked at Husinyu, his eyes fixed on him, and his face turned red without hesitation. Alright, I'm going to eat now. I'll leave first. Shang Zhaoran ran home like he was running for his life, thinking that this would cover up his blush. He left Husinyu in place, watching his back run away and secretly laughing. It's really cute, Husinyu thought to himself, so he walked home happily. The days that followed returned to mediocrity, and Husinyu would go to that park almost every day or every other day. After all, it was summer vacation, and there was plenty of time. The two of them went from being slightly unfamiliar at the beginning to talking about everything later. Shang Zhaoran's appearance also gave Husinyu a hint of color in her black and white life, warming her indifferent heart again. Chapter 6. Freshmen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Happy times are always very short. In the golden October of autumn, a group of students stepped on the golden fallen leaves and entered the campus to start their new academic year. Since Husinyu learned that Shang Zhaoran was with him during the summer vacation, the first thing he did when he returned to school was to find this friend. Who? Shang Zhaoran. He's not studying here anymore. Yes, he won't come from the beginning of this semester, Shang Zhaoran's homeroom teacher said to Husinyu. Upon hearing this news, Husinyu felt waves of heartache and confusion in his heart. After mechanically nodding and thanking the teacher, he walked out of the teaching building. Why didn't he tell me? Wasn't I his best friend? Husinyu felt like he had a lot to say in his heart, but couldn't speak out, like a thorn in his back, like a thorn in his throat. He lowered his head, tears seemed to break through the floodgate and burst into tears. It was as if he had lost the most important thing to her, indescribable, unclear, constantly cutting, and disorganized. After a long time, Husinyu completed all her studies in a systematic manner, and was admitted to the best high school in the city in high school. She also lived up to expectations and was admitted to the top 985 universities in Dongfeng University. However, due to her introverted personality from childhood to adulthood, Hu Xinyu didn't want to have too much interaction with her classmates, so she lived on her own outside of school. Hu Xinyu's parents also knew her child's personality, so they didn't say much, just gave her some money to pay more attention to safety. In fact, she has always lived on her own. She bought the house with her parents' money, and coupled with her natural intelligence, she opened a small company with her professional knowledge. She went to school and managed it at the same time, and her career can be said to be thriving. The most coincidental thing may be that she met Shang Xiaoran here at this moment. Shang Xiaoran was in his bedroom and informed his parents of the news of finding a job. Although his parents were very happy after hearing this, they also showed a hint of concern. After all, his child had just entered the workforce, and if he was cheated of money, it was not a problem. It would not be good for him if it caused harm to his body. In addition, he also had some psychological problems now. After hanging up the phone, Shang Fu rubbed his forehead, which is pitiful for parents. After telling the people around him the news, Shang Xiaoran lay contentedly on the bed, preparing to welcome his new life. However, after the excitement passed, he seemed to remember some childhood memories in his heart. It was as if he had a playmate named something when he was very young. Is it Hu Xinyu? Shang Xiaoran thought to himself, but there shouldn't be such a coincidence. Hey, let it go. I'll be making money soon, and I can't help but feel happy in my heart. Lying in bed, I fell asleep in the early morning of this day. With the sound of knocking on the door, Shang Xiaoran was forced to pull back to reality from his sleep. He opened his hazy eyes and put on his slippers in a daze. He walked to the door and opened it, only to see Hu Xinyu standing at the door. Get up quickly, go to the company with me today, Hu Xinyu said and turned around before leaving. Shang Xiaoran shook his head to wake up a bit, and then remembered that today was his first day at work. It was so tiring, and it was indeed the same as going to work in school. Both very tired, Shang Xiaoran walked unsteadily to the bathroom to start washing up. Boys may have this hobby of putting their hair back and pretending to be the god of gamblers after washing their hair. Shang Xiaoran looked at himself in the mirror, his hair that had not yet been dried and his 6 abdominal muscles in front of him falling into deep narcissism. Isn't it okay yet? Hu Xinyu was waiting in the living room and realized it had been a long time before he came out. He walked over and knocked on the door. Immediately, Shang Xiaoran was startled by the sudden knocking on the door, shouting his toothbrush and blurring a response before accelerating his pace. Time is running out, let's buy something to eat at the company later, Hu Xinyu said as he put on his shoes and looked at Shang Xiaoran's deep eyes, which revealed an indescribable emotion. Because it was too late, Hu Xinyu drove away today. Shang Xiaoran was shocked to see Mercedes-Benz in the garage, which he couldn't express. Did he really run into a wealthy woman? Am I finally about to turn over? Do you still know how to drive? Shocked, Shang Xiaoran asked with a short circuit in his mind, are you talking nonsense? I don't know how to drive. Why am I buying a car? Hu Xinyu frowned and looked at the less intelligent boy in front of him. The two of them set off quickly. Hu Xinyu's driving skills were very good, and he drove smoothly during the morning rush hour in Xincheng. However, Shang Xiaoran, who was sitting in the passenger seat, didn't feel that good anymore. He changed lanes several times, swaying left and right. He didn't eat in the morning, so he almost vomited what he had eaten last night. Sister, please slow down. I won't be able to do it anymore, Shang Xiaoran said in a daze. He didn't know if he would still make it to buy himself personal accident insurance now. He thought to himself, TSK, I don't know who stayed in the bathroom for so long without coming out, Hu Xinyu complained. The two of them quickly arrived at the company. The place was not very big, but it looked very clean and tidy. There was a wall at the entrance with the 4 big characters, use in finance and taxation, written on it. Behind them were desks after desks. Since they arrived relatively late, most of the employees were working at their workstations. When they saw Hu Xinyu walking over, they greeted Mr. Hu, and Hu Xinyu replied one by one. Shang Xiaoran was curious as he looked at various new things in front of him. This is my office. Hu Xinyu stopped at the door of a room. Shang Xiaoran looked up and saw a sign on the door with the words, Boss's Office. After following Hu Xinyu through the door, she found that the room was not very large, with only 2 desks and 2 computers, all sides of which were made of glass. In front of the glass was a blinded curtain, which was usually closed, so she couldn't see what was going on inside from outside. Just sit on the computer opposite me from now on. I'll teach you what you usually do, and then you can help them share the workload. Oh, good, thank you. Shang Xiaoran regained consciousness and thanked her with a smile on his face. He couldn't help but feel a little excited as he saw his own workstation for the first time. You're welcome, after all, I can't let you owe me rent, Hu Xinyu smiled and said to him. If you observe carefully, Hu Xinyu's eyes still have a hint of indulgence when speaking. This kind of indulgence is not like the elders do to children, but like a different feeling. Okay, so you're worried about this. You're really a wicked capitalist. Shang Xiaoran shook his head and sighed, but also sat in his workstation and opened the computer. Come on, do you know how to write the word capital, brother? Hu Xinyu walked over and knocked on Shang Xiaoran's head, then turned around and sat at his workstation. Hey, why are you still taking action? Shang Xiaoran rubbed her head and looked at her. Hu Xinyu leaned over from the computer and glared at him, then Shang Xiaoran shut up. Sigh, I have to lower my head under the eaves. Chapter 7. Diligence can make up for clumsiness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Alright, don't be fooled. You're not here to work as a mascot. Sit down and I'll teach you some basic things. Hu Xinyu patted the stool beside him, gesturing for him to sit next to him. Oh, okay. Shang Xiaoran rubbed his head and sat down. Perhaps due to distance, a few strands of Hu Xinyu's hair brushed across Shang Xiaoran's cheek, and a faint fragrance came from his breath. Shang Xiaoran was taken aback, looked up, and found that Hu Xinyu had not noticed before sitting down peacefully. This also made the young man's heart start to become restless. Let's talk about it. What do you know now? Can you use Excel or something? Hu Xinyu looked up and asked, but looking at the boy's dull eyes in front of him, it was obvious that he was overthinking. Hu Xinyu shook his head and sighed. It seemed that there was still a long way to go to prepare him for the early stage of work. It's like this, each company's approach may be different, but in our Excel, the main focus is on internal accounts, while financial software records external accounts, such as Yanyu, and Hu Xinyu said as she pointed her tender fingers at the things on the computer screen. Balabala said a lot, but she didn't know if the boy in front of her could understand everything. Anyway, it looked like it should be none. P.S. The Excel of the company I used to work for did only record internal accounts, and I had to worry every day when I went to work, afraid that someone would come and check zero. Oh, on the other hand, Shang Xiaoran's face was also bewildered, with his mind full of who I was, where I was, and what this was all about. I had never learned anything about who would save me, but on the surface, he still pretended to be calm, as if everything was under his control. You didn't understand, did you? Hu Xinyu looked at him and said. Although Shang Xiaoran disguised himself very well, Hu Xinyu still saw that trace in his eyes, clear stupidity. Me, I probably didn't understand. Am I really stupid? Shang Xiaoran realized that she had been seen through and lowered her head, afraid to look at her. Ah, it's embarrassing. Am I really stupid? Will she despise me? First, she despised me. Then, she kicked me out of the company, and then she kicked me out of the house. There was no place to live, so she had to sleep in a bridge cave. In just 13 seconds, Shang Xiaoran had already staged a big drama in her heart. It's okay, I didn't understand anything at first. Let's do it this way. When you have something to do, you can try it first. I'll know you next to me. Practice makes perfect. This is a textbook. You learn basic theories first. If you can't understand borrowing, then you really can't do it. Hu Xinyu looked at the boy in front of him, feeling a hint of sympathy in his heart. He smiled and touched his head, which directly confused Shang Xiaoran. Ah. Why did she touch my head? Is it so intimate? Do you think she has a crush on me? Am I so charming? Shang Xiaoran thought to herself, and couldn't help but look up at her sitting next to her. Their eyes met unconsciously, and Shang Xiaoran immediately turned her head away. Also, how could such a beautiful and successful girl fall in love with me? It must be an illusion. Come on, although you may be a bit clumsy, diligence can make up for your shortcomings. At this moment, Hu Xinyu also handed the textbook to Shang Xiaoran. He looked up and gave Hu Xinyu a white glance, as if saying, I'm not stupid. He took the book and returned to his workstation. He calmed down and flipped through the book. His academic performance in school was also good, and even the small 2 textbooks could still stump him. It's exactly the same as when I was a child. Hu Xinyu said to herself, but her voice was very low. Shang Xiaoran didn't hear it, nor did she hear it herself. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was noon. Shang Xiaoran put down his book and stretched lazily. The morning study had already given him a rough understanding of the main framework, but as his mental labor increased, his stomach began to grumble uncontrollably. Just as he was about to ask where Hu Xinyu was going for lunch at noon, he found that Hu Xinyu was not in the office at the moment. Hey, it's strange. When did you go out without telling me? Shang Xiaoran scratched his head. Maybe he was too focused and didn't notice her going out at all. He took out his phone and sent her a message of authority. Shang Xiaoran, are you there? Where have you been? I'm hungry, Hu Xinyu, I'm in a meeting, can you take a look at what you want to eat? Shang Xiaoran, okay. JPG, Shang Xiaoran closed his book, got up and went out to see what he had to eat. In the end, he chose Sha County, which had the highest fault tolerance rate, among a bunch of diverse shops. He wolfed down the food and collapsed on the back of his chair, took out his phone and flipped through his social media. As he was in his 3rd year of high school, his classmates didn't have time to post any social media posts. Most of them were posted by his relatives on social media to help him cut a knife. Shang Xiaoran felt bored and turned off his phone to go out and digest the food in his stomach. Perhaps it was because he walked too hastily in the morning and didn't even pay attention to this place. Now when he came out for a stroll, he realized that the environment was particularly beautiful. Willow trees were planted on both sides of the road, and long branches were dancing gracefully with the spring breeze. Shang Xiaoran walked aimlessly on the street and sat on a bench under the tree in a shady place. He took out a cigarette from his pocket and lit it. Looking at the smoke spreading in front of him, Shang Xiaoran's thoughts seemed to have entered another space. If I were still in school now, I should be playing basketball with friends on the playground, because Shang Xiaoran is relatively tall as 1.9 meters. Therefore, when classmates play basketball at school, they usually call him out. Even if he says many times that he can't play, many people call him along. People's stereotypes are very strange. Even if he hasn't said he loves playing basketball, when he looks at this person who is relatively tall, he thinks that this person's basketball must be very good. With the thoughts in his heart, Shang Xiaoran's face also appears to have a smile, and looking at the young man in front of him through the smoke mist, there is a deep meaning to his eyes. Unfortunately, there's no such thing as if. Enjoy the present moment. After quickly finishing smoking a cigarette, he extinguished the cigarette butt and threw it into the nearby trash can. He got up and returned to the company, but at the same time, he didn't notice a figure not far away who seemed to be looking towards him. After Shang Xiaoran left, that figure also disappeared and disappeared. Sorry brother, I'm too busy today to bother you, said Hu Xinyu, who hurriedly walked in shortly after Shang Xiaoran arrived at the office. Because she was older than Shang Xiaoran, she used to call her brother, even though Shang Xiaoran didn't like it that much. It's okay, otherwise I'll cause you trouble here, Shang Xiaoran said, handing Hu Xinyu a tissue and gesturing for her to wipe the sweat off her forehead. Seeing that Hu Xinyu didn't react, Shang Xiaoran personally started wiping her up. Thank you, thank you. Hu Xinyu was startled by Shang Xiaoran's sudden intimacy, and her legs quickly retreated uncontrollably. If you carefully observed, you would also notice a blush on her face. You're welcome. Hu Xinyu's retreat left Shang Xiaoran's hands in mid-air. It was only at this moment that she realized her movements were a bit off topic, but she pretended to be calm and quickly sat down to read. It was also strange. At this moment, her heart suddenly quickened, and she couldn't read the content of the book at all. She only felt that this small room was filled with a charming atmosphere. Chapter 8. Cooking Together. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At 5 p.m., the alarm clock sounded to remind Hu Xinyu that she should finish work. Hu Xinyu, who was sitting in front of the computer, stretched lazily. Her light and thin clothes outlined her perfect curve with the extension of her arms. She lifted her phone and glanced at the time. She said to Shang Xiaoran, who was sitting across from her, that the two of them had started packing up and went home. As Shang Xiaoran was on his first day, he had nothing to pack up and quickly stood at the door waiting for Hu Xinyu. Don't eat out at night, go home and cook together. Hu Xinyu didn't know why she thought this way. She was already very lazy and would usually go out for dinner or order takeout at home. However, as Shang Xiaoran moved into her home, the spark in her heart that she wanted to cook reignited. Perhaps it was because Shang Xiaoran envied her ability to cook in the morning, and a faint smile appeared on her face when she thought of this. But I don't know how to cook. Shang Xiaoran awkwardly lowered his head upon hearing Hu Xinyu's words. At home, he could be said to have stretched out his clothes and opened his mouth to eat, not allowing him to do anything, let alone cook. He would shock his parents by mopping the floor while resting at home, but it can be said that he has no ability to make a living. If you don't know it, you have to learn. If you don't know it now, you can never know it for a lifetime. Hu Xinyu walked up to him and pointed at him with a finger, a hint of anger flashing in his eyes. Before Shang Xiaoran could continue speaking, he left the house. Shang Xiaoran had no choice but to follow behind her in a disheveled manner. The two of them drove to the market, a place that Shang Xiaoran hadn't visited a few times in the past year, and because he was in a small city, the market was relatively not too large. The first time he came to this market, he only felt that there was a wide variety of dishes. Shang Xiaoran followed behind Hu Xinyu like a curious baby, asking, "What kind of dish is this? Is this big crab? What kind is this? What is avocado? Is it made of avocado?" Hu Xinyu patiently answered Shang Xiaoran's questions, feeling that this little boy seemed to have not grown up yet and was full of everything. Curious, I took him to know this world like an old mother. I didn't buy too much food, and Hu Xinyu felt that it was too much to eat. If I didn't finish it and put it in the refrigerator, I might have forgotten to avoid wasting the amount of food that two people only bought for one meal. The responsibility of carrying vegetables naturally fell on Shang Xiaoran. However, Shang Xiaoran didn't say anything. After all, it wasn't his own money to buy it, so it seems like there's no problem with putting in some effort on his own. After returning home, the two of them changed their clothes and went to the kitchen to cook. Hu Xinyu knew he didn't know how to cook, so he asked him to wash vegetables. However, when Hu Xinyu saw the tomatoes that were almost washed to pieces, he realized that it might not be a wise idea to ask him to wash vegetables. Hu Xinyu looked at him with a torn tomato in one hand, and his eyes were full of helplessness, which was also strange. Hu Xinyu usually treats people with strict indifference, but when faced with responsibilities, this little boy himself couldn't get angry. It's okay, practice slowly. You still have a lot to learn. Hu Xinyu shook his head and threw the washed and rotten tomatoes into the trash can. The tomato and scrambled eggs he was planning to make had to be forced into scrambled eggs. As soon as he finished beating the eggs, Hu Xinyu pulled him to the front of the stove. I say one step, you do one step, first start with the fire. Upon hearing Hu Xinyu's instructions, Shang Xiaoran also obediently stood in front of the stove, but the button in front of him couldn't be twisted no matter how hard it was turned, and neither the left nor right sides could be turned. There was no other way, so he cast a pleading look at Hu Xinyu for help. Should we try pressing it down? Hu Xinyu struggled to suppress the thought of cursing in his heart and said this sentence with a smile as much as possible. In a place that Shang Xiaoran couldn't see, Hu Xinyu's right hand had already trembled slightly. Finally, with Shang Xiaoran's continuous attempts, a circle of fire burst out on the stove. Put in the oil first, that's the yellow bottle on your left. Hu Xinyu pointed to the yellow bottle and said. Shang Xiaoran also followed her instructions step by step. When he finally sprinkled a handful of scallions and put them on the plate, Shang Xiaoran felt an indescribable sense of achievement in his heart. Don't move yet, let me take a photo. It's my first time cooking, Hu Xinyu said quickly as he saw Hu Xinyu about to bring the dish to the table. Of course, it's my first time cooking, so I need to take a photo to commemorate it. Although the appearance is not very good, some of them have already burnt out, it still hasn't extinguished the still evident passion. Hu Xinyu couldn't help but smile at the boy who was giggling at his food, and his heart couldn't help but feel a smile. It's still so cute. After all the preparation work was finished, the two finally sat down at the table to eat. As soon as Shang Xiaoran took the chopsticks, he eagerly asked Hu Yusin to taste the dishes he had made. Hu Xinyu picked up the chopsticks and looked at the slightly blackened egg in front of him, frowning slightly. He kept silently thinking that this was their first time cooking, took a bite and put it in his mouth. In an instant, a bitter and salty taste rushed to the sky. Hu Xinyu frowned and forced himself to swallow it, then quickly went to the kitchen to pick up a glass of water and it flowed down smoothly. Is it so unpleasant? Shang Xiaoran watched Hu Xinyu's reaction and took a bite. As soon as he entered his mouth, he started looking for the trash can. After vomiting, he also took a glass of water to suppress the feeling of wanting to vomit. Hu Xinyu was really amazing. She didn't even vomit. Shang Xiaoran thought to herself and felt embarrassed to see Hu Xinyu. She lowered her head and returned to the dining table to sit down. It's okay, it's good if you cook well for the first time, Hu Xinyu comforted him. Fortunately, Shang Xiaoran only cooked one irrelevant dish, otherwise tonight's dinner would have been a problem. Shang Xiaoran looked up at her and tugged at the corner of her mouth, with a forced smile on his face. The two of them also had a tacit understanding and silently finished the meal. After finishing his meal, Shang Xiaoran took the initiative to take on the task of washing dishes, considering his actions. Although he didn't do anything at home, he still washed dishes frequently. Hu Xinyu looked at him with a skeptical expression, because he usually only had this set of tableware at home. If Shang Xiaoran broke it, he would have to buy it again, which would be troublesome. However, he still had to go wash dishes. Fortunately, Shang Xiaoran didn't have any problems during the washing process. In the end, his dishes lay peacefully in the cabinet, and Hu Xinyu breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. All right, I'll go back to the room first. If you have anything to do, just call me. Hu Xinyu watched as he finished everything and returned to his bedroom. After a busy day, she was so tired. Now, all she could think of was lying in bed and getting a good night's sleep. Chapter 9. Celebrating birthdays together. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The days that followed were relatively dull. Every morning, the two of them went to work together. As time passed, Shang Xiaoran gradually became able to take on some less complex tasks from a novice who didn't know anything. After all, life is not a movie, and there won't be so many ups and downs in the plot for no reason. Hu Xinyu was sitting in front of the workstation when he suddenly burst into an unwelcome guest, with 3 knocking sounds. Shang Xiaoran turned around and saw a young girl standing in front of the door. Compared to Hu Xinyu's senior sister, she gave a very cute feeling. Her round face had a pair of big eyes, and her long eyelashes blinked very cute. Wearing a pink outfit further highlighted the cute feeling. May I ask who you're looking for? Shang Xiaoran doesn't remember this person in the unit, and it's a bit confusing. I haven't asked you yet. Who is this? Although she looks cute, her speech is not at all cute, and her tone is very aggressive. She was confused when asked by Shang Xiaoran, but she just called her Hu. Is it difficult to say that it's Hu Xinyu? Alright, Tong, stop making trouble. Let me introduce you to my friend Shang Xiaoran. Hu Xinyu looked at the little girl who was having fun with a helpless expression on his face. then turned his head to look at Shang Xiaoran. "This is Li Tong, my college classmate and roommate." Shang Xiaoran awkwardly waved to Li Tong after learning that this was Hu Xinyu's friend. "Sorry for offending you earlier. You can call me Xiaoran in the future." Shang Xiaoran extended his hand to Li Tong, who also extended his hand and gently shook it. "Okay, I'll tell you why you haven't returned to school for so long. It turns out you're hiding your beauty in a golden house, or a handsome little guy." Li Tong pinched her waist and asked Hu Xinyu in a deep breath, "What are you talking nonsense about?" Hu Xinyu frowned and glared at her. "I've been doing a lot lately, so I just came back. I'll be back in a few days." "Are you still in school now?" Shang Xiaoran interrupted the conversation with a bewildered expression. In his impression, Hu Xinyu seemed to have never told him about her school. "Yeah, you never asked me." Hu Xinyu seemed to see through what Shang Xiaoran was going to say and looked helplessly at the silly boy. "Of course, Hu is our school belle, isn't he?" Li Tong said as Hu Xinyu's mouth curled up in the sky, as if praising herself. "Ah, ha ha ha, I seem to have been ignoring this question. Which university is it?" Shang Xiaoran scratched his head awkwardly and said to Li Tong that it was not surprising that Hu Xinyu was the school flower. After all, this kind of beautiful girl exists at the school flower level no matter where she is. Before Li Tong could start, Hu Xinyu spoke up at the University of Technology, which made Li Tong very angry. Li Tong is usually a talkative person and has been scolded by Hu Xinyu for this issue. "What year are you in now? Don't you have any classes?" "In my third year, it's obvious that my younger brother." "University is not like high school, where we have very few classes now, only a few classes a week." Li Tong finally interjected and Balabla said a lot, which also left Hu Xinyu speechless in his heart. "Oh, then." Before she could finish speaking, Shang Xiaoran's phone suddenly rang. After seeing the name of the caller on the screen, she gestured for Hu Xinyu to answer the phone and leave. "No wonder Hu, it turns out you're not going back because there's a man around you. Didn't you tell me that you wouldn't be in love before you turned 30? What's going on? I need you to explain it to me." Li Tong sat next to Hu Xinyu, leaning on his chin with both hands, staring at him with flickering eyes. "Hey, what's the explanation? Our relationship isn't what you think. He's just my friend and employee. I saw that he couldn't bear to take him in here alone." Hu Xinyu explained their relationship for a while and why Shang Xiaoran came out to work before graduating from high school, but deliberately concealed the fact that the two of us are currently living together. After all, Li Tong couldn't hide anything in her heart. If she knew, everyone knew. "Sorry, where did I say earlier?" Before Li Tong could continue asking Shang Xiaoran, Hu Xinyu pushed the door in. Seeing that he had finally finished the call, Hu Xinyu breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. Who knew that Li Tong would ask any strange questions later? "It's okay, it's just some irrelevant words. By the way, someone called you just now. Is there anything wrong?" Hu Xinyu didn't want the chatterbox around her to stop talking, so she first spoke up and asked. "Oh, it's not a big deal, it's just that my mom called me to wish me a happy birthday today." Shang Xiaoran spoke with a nonchalant expression on his face. He had no concept of celebrating birthdays because he hasn't celebrated them much since childhood. His understanding of his birthday was to eat something I usually don't want to eat today, which led to him forgetting even which day his birthday was. "That's a big deal. I'll celebrate your birthday tonight." Hu Xinyu suddenly became excited for some reason, as if a light was shining in his eyes. "Cut, these two people are fine, they almost put their worries on their faces." Li Tong gave Hu Xinyu a white glance, thinking about how a person who is usually so cold suddenly turned into this. Did this little boy give him some medicine? "It's okay, but it's all the same. How about that, birthday? You can only celebrate it once a year, right?" Li Tong still believes in his sixth sense. Who must like this little boy, so why not go with the flow and push the boat yourself? Yeah, let me see and choose a restaurant. "We'll have your birthday tonight and celebrate it well for you," said Hu Xinyu. Shang Xiaoran felt embarrassed to refuse, as she had never had a chance to celebrate her birthday with friends before. This time, let's just experience it. Upon hearing Shang Xiaoran's agreement with Hu Xinyu, she immediately took out her phone and started choosing the restaurant she wanted to go to tonight with Li Tong. It was more appropriate for two girls to choose together. After chatting and discussing for a while, the two finally decided on the restaurant they wanted to go to tonight. Hu Xinyu told the employees that she had left early today, and in the midst of cheers from everyone, the three of them left the company because the chosen location was not far from the company. The three of them arrived quickly. Upon entering, Hu Xinyu showed the appointment number to the waiter and the waiter took them to a private room. The decoration of this restaurant is very exquisite, exuding a luxurious atmosphere everywhere. The private rooms are also particularly quiet, and there are many paintings hanging on the surrounding walls that are not yet appreciated. Seeing him, he also looks confused. Don't be fooled by De Shouxing, hurry up and order the dishes. Hu Xinyu placed the menu in front of Shang Xiaoran, gesturing for him to order first. Shang Xiaoran glanced at the menu and found that the cheapest dishes cost 288 yuan. He looked at it from beginning to end, shook his head, and then returned the menu to Hu Xinyu. What's wrong, isn't there anything you like to eat? Hu Xinyu looked at him with a puzzled expression on his face. You better come, this dish is really expensive for me. Shang Xiaoran was really hesitant to order it. Suddenly, he thought of a joke online. The first time he went to a Western restaurant to look at the menu, everything was very expensive, so he ordered two cheaper English names. After a long time, he didn't serve the dishes and asked the waiter what I ordered. The waiter said that you had already played the two piano pieces you ordered just now. Hu Xinyu chuckled and said, then let me do it. Whatever I order, what do you eat? After seeing Shang Xiaoran nod, she started ordering and secretly said something to the waiter while waiting for the dishes to be served. The two girls kept chatting and pouring out their longing for this period of time. Shang Xiaoran couldn't get in and kept looking down at her phone, which was quite sad. Apart from her parents, no one knew her birthday anymore, and she felt inexplicably lost in her heart. Hello, Mr. Shang, today is your birthday. This is the longevity noodles we gave you. Happy birthday, peace and joy. With the waiter bringing a bowl of longevity noodles, Shang Xiaoran's thoughts were pulled back to reality. Looking at the longevity noodles and Hu Xinyu's smiling face in front of him, his eyes almost fell into tears, but he was able to resist. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your hard work. Looking at the noodles in front of me, there was no fancy decoration. A bowl of normal noodles was placed on top of a poached egg, but Shang Xiaoran felt an unprecedented warmth and started eating under the gaze of everyone. All right, I'm in a hurry today. I'll make up for your birthday cake in 2 days, Hu Xinyu said as she looked at Shang Xiaoran. Shang Xiaoran didn't say anything, just nodded and thanked her. It was the first time since she fell ill that she felt so warm. A quick meal was eaten, and after bidding farewell to Li Tong, the two of them went home together. After washing up, they returned to their respective bedrooms. While Hu Xinyu was standing at the bedroom door, preparing to close the door, Shang Xiaoran walked forward to express his special gratitude to her. Hu Xinyu only smiled lightly to show his respect. Returning to the bedroom and lying on the bed, Shang Xiaoran reminisced about the bits and pieces of today, and compared it with the past decade or so, tossed and turned, unable to sleep tonight, destined to be sleepless. Chapter 10. Going out for a walk. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text.